Hello and welcome to the NASCAR News Zone, the show where we take you through all the biggest stories in the world of stock car racing ahead of the Toyota Save Mart 350 this weekend in Sonoma. This week, Denny Hamlin has criticised 23XI driver Bubba Wallace in the wake of Chicago street race, where there have also been calls to ban Wallace over his childish antics. And Dale Jr. has said we should go back to the Winston Cup point system. Does he have a point? Well, all that and a whole lot more is coming up in today's show. If you're watching on YouTube, skip to the timestamps in the video description to watch the story that you're most interested in. So, without further ado, let's dive in. So it's fair to say there's been a fair amount of drama going on after the NASCAR Chicago street race. A lot of people are not really happy with this street race being on the calendar, calling for it to get axed, and they may well get their wish. Of course, the 2025 edition of this race was the last contracted edition of the Chicago Grant Part 165, and we are heavily rumoured to be heading to San Diego next year. But there's been drama as well with some of the drivers, not least Bubba Wallace, a man who is used to a fair bit of controversy when it comes to things on and off the track. But what is happening here? Why has there been drama around a penalty, or what should have been a penalty, when it comes to this race involving Bubba? Let's have a look at what's happened here, guys. Full story is in this video as always. So, of course, I'm referring to the clash between Bubba Wallace and Alex Bowman in the closing stages of the Chicago race at the weekend. And there's a lot on the line here, really. This isn't just the victory, which Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, went on to do. It's also the in-season challenge happening right now in NASCAR, where there's $1 million on the line. If you don't make the All-Star race earlier in the season, this is a golden opportunity to get a lot of money for your efforts. Even for the richest NASCAR drivers, $1 million is a lot of money, and it's not something that you will ever turn up. And of course, this isn't the first time that Bowman and Wallace have tangled out on track, nor is it the first time that it has happened at Chicago either. Just remember what happened last year between the two of them. After the race last year, the two tangled. Bubba Wallace basically rammed into the side of Alex Bowman after the checkered flag had fallen, leaving Bubba with a $50,000 fine for his troubles. This time, though, it wasn't Bowman that came off worse from it. It was Bubba Wallace who ended up spinning around when they clashed out on track, when they were battling for position. So what's come of it? Has Bowman got a penalty for spinning out Bubba Wallace? Well, as of the time of recording, no penalty for Bowman. And that's despite video footage now being released showing that Bowman did in fact make contact with Bubba Wallace's right rear. Now, whether that is enough for a penalty or not, we'll have to see what happens with the NASCAR officials, but some people are basically saying that it is karma for Bubba Wallace what he did last year, and he's finally getting what he deserves, and it's good to see that some people are standing up to him. And even if there is a penalty for this that's handed out by NASCAR, it's not going to be a race suspension or something really serious like that. It may well just be a fine or a small time penalty that'll be applied to the race results after, although again that's doubtful they'll do that at this point. It's Tuesday as I'm recording this, so if they were going to do something they probably would have done it yesterday. But this is far from the most controversial incident when it comes to crashes in NASCAR. Just look at some of the incidents we saw last year, and some people have said that Bowman isn't even to blame for this in the slightest. Bowman has control of his car and Wallace just spins out, and that's not uncharacteristic again for Wallace given his season so far, which has not been a good one. But guys, which side of the fence are you on with this? Do you think Wallace was spun out unfairly and Bowman should get punished for it? Was it just a skill issue for Wallace? I want to hear what you have to say in the comments below. You know it's bad when your boss is calling you out, or at least sort of boss anyway. The co-owner of 23XI Racing, Denny Hamlin, has been calling out Bubba Wallace after his antics at the Chicago street race last week. Of course, Hamlin does not race for 23XI Racing. He's more than that. He is an owner, of course, of the team, alongside basketball legend Michael Jordan. So whenever there's talk about their drivers, Hamlin always does weigh in. Of course, he races for a different team, but he's always got his opinion there, and his opinion really does matter when it comes to the running of that team. So I already covered what happened between Bubba Wallace and Alex Bowman in the closing stages of the Chicago race. But let's just say they came to blows. Bubba was not very happy about it and was wanting to blame Bowman for what was going on there. And a lot of people basically said, well, good on Bowman for actually standing up for himself, because the same thing, well, a similar thing anyway, happened the previous year where after the checkered flag, Bubba Wallace and Bowman again came to blows after the checkered flag fell. But Hamlin has been critical of what Wallace has been doing now. What's he been saying? Let's have a look at what's been said here, guys. I got the full story here for you as always. So Hamlin's main concern when it comes to 23XI Racing, not just with Wallace, with the team as a whole, is their failure to, quote, execute properly. and consistently. Hamlin described Wallace's qualifying as horrible. But in the race, credit to him, after starting 37th on the grid, he climbed his way up to 14th by lap 25. But he didn't have it all his own way. Kyle Larson made contact with the 23 car and spun him around. But he still kept going. However, Wallace was pretty furious about what was going on there. And on the radio, he was mad at his spotter. And we've spoke about the spotters at this race and how they don't quite have the same visibility as they would around other tracks. But either way, Wallace was not giving his spotter any sort of break when it came to this. He said on the radio, quote, "That was a late as call, man. Got to be better through here. I didn't know he was there until we got hit." Again, not a man to mince his words, is Bubba. But despite that, Wallace still made it up into the top 10 in the closing stages of the race. And of course, inevitably, he was in a battle with Alex Bowman. It's just destiny that these two at some point do make contact with each other around Chicago, I swear. Now, although contact was made, most people laid the blame at the feet of Bubba Wallace. Although contact was made between the pair of them, most people were blaming Wallace for being unable to control his car in that situation and just saying that it was hard and fast racing. It was definitely entertaining, there's no doubt about that. But whoever's blame it actually was for the incident, Hamlin was saying that you cannot be involved in a late race incident like that if you're to make the checkered flag. After all, to finish first you must finish. Hamlin said the following on his podcast after the race, quote, "You can't just take yourself out. That's what the deciding factor is that the 23 team is way faster than their cars are faster, their drives are faster, they are faster than the cars they are all around in points. But they just don't execute as well as others. The other guys are in 10 spots or worse on average finishing position, it feels like. I'm not getting blanketed about everyone. Everyone's been good, but I know speed-wise they shouldn't be in this position. Now, most of it is, and I've mentioned this, is DNFs that were not of his doing whatsoever. There's been mechanicals, there's been other wrecks that he's gotten a part of that had nothing to do with him. But everyone has these where you control the outcome, and it led to a bad outcome. And I think this was one that was showing things, and I think this was one that was slowing things down and putting a big picture into play. Probably would have been the better idea. Basically, he's saying that discretion is the better part of valor when it comes to that. And he made it clear that the number 48 car, Bowman, was not to blame for this as well later on in the podcast. So, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with him at all. You know, consistent points finishes, especially early on in the season like this, or before the playoffs get going anyway, midway through the season at this point, of course. Time's flying, guys, I swear. But, you know, at this point, you really need to be consistent. Wallace needs to get a win to get into the playoffs, simple as that. He's on the edge of it pretty much when it comes to that. But if he can't win, which he was never going to win, Van Gisbergen was absolutely on another level around Chicago, then he's got to finish in the top 10, aim for the top 5, but don't go ruining your race because of it. I understand that you want to, you know, go for a gap that is there and try and exploit it, obviously, but if you do things like that, it can backfire massively, and in this case, it did. But guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I've seen plenty of comments when it comes to this incident between Bowman and Wallace, and most people are basically saying, you know, Wallace is a bit of an idiot, to put it lightly. I'm kind of mincing my words on that one. You can go back at the other video and look at the comments if you want to see exactly what people said. But yeah, Bubba Wallace, I know, we're speaking about Bubba Wallace again. This time we are speaking about him because Kyle Busch has weighed in on the war of words, the war on the track between himself and Alex Bowman. Now, we've talked extensively about what's happened here. Basically, two made contact later on in the race at Chicago. Some people have even been saying that Wallace should get a ban because of the repeated offences it's been doing in NASCAR. It's just a bit of a series of things. The incident itself was not really that bad, to be honest with you, but it wasn't great driving either from Wallace, who of course gave up a good points position and helped trying to get to the playoffs really at that point by making contact with Bowman. It was hard and fast racing, but Wallace basically misjudged the situation and paid the price because of it. But what has Kyle Busch been saying about this? One of the most experienced drivers in the grid, the guy on the grid who has the most NASCAR Cup Series wins as things stand at the moment. Although, of course, Denny Hamlin is catching him fast at this rate. But let's have a look at what's been said here, because Kyle Busch is no stranger to on-track controversies or collisions. But still he's someone whose opinion does have a lot of weight. Kyle Busch said the following to SiriusXM, the official NASCAR radio channel. He said, and I quote, "Yeah, what was interesting, I think there was, I don't know if it was Bubba's mind, had to be a little bit that him and Bowman were going against each other for the bracket challenge for the weekend. Basically, the in-season challenge in NASCAR, $1 million up for grabs. He wants that $1 million. I mean, who wouldn't? But still, there's boundaries on the racetrack. So he was trying to hold back the 48 as much as he could, even though the 48 was on fresher tyres, and just block him and knock him out of the way, and they were being rough with one another, literally for that. I'm one of those guys where I'm like, you got to finish too, right? To finish first you must finish. That famous phrase. It's very true. Like, there's a race within a race, but you've got to focus on the bigger grand scheme of things, which is going out there and finishing the race and score as many points as you can for the playoffs. If you're not going to win, obviously you need to get as many points as possible. So that was definitely a hit in their book of not being able to get a good finish as much as they wanted. But it looked afterwards like it was no hard feelings, because Bubba basically said that, right? Like, hey, I was running with you rough, I was running with you hard, I was trying to block you, I was hanging on for dear life. So there wasn't much drama afterwards, as much as people would have liked to have fought, because, you know, I think Bubba conceded to the fact that, like, he was doing all he could to prohibit the 48 from passing him. So not as much drama afterwards as many as thought was going to happen there. I don't think these two really like each other at all. Well, you could say that again. There's been a few times over the years when they've run into each other. Yeah, like 2024 when Bubba literally just drove into Bowman after the final lap at Chicago. Those guys have got previous at the same track. But Bowman and Wallace did speak after the race, and nothing about that conversation appeared to be hostile. But that is 2 years in a row these two have come to blows at the same track. But still, a lot of people are saying that Wallace's days are numbered at 23XI Race. And you can have a look what Denny Hamlin, the co-owner of that team, had to say about him as well after the race in Chicago in a separate video I did earlier in the week. Spoiler alert, wasn't full of praise for him. Not really surprised though. But yeah, guys, what do you think? Where do you stand on this? Is this all a bit overblown? Is this just a bit of drama that just needs to be moved on from? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Shane Van Gisbergen was on another level at Chicago once again. Just like 2 years ago, he went to victory lane around the Grant Park 165 street race, and he looked absolutely in no trouble to be able to do so. He dominated this race. While he didn't win stage 1 or stage 2, he was very much taking the optimal strategy in order to put himself in the best possible position to cross the line first when the checkered flag was waving at the conclusion of the race. And something I didn't mention in my review of this race is the fact that SVG has set some records, broke some records. That third victory in the Cup Series makes him the most successful foreign-born NASCAR driver in the Cup Series of all time. Just shows you how homogenous and how dominant the US drivers have been in NASCAR over the decades. It's not a huge surprise that he's up there, but already the most successful in terms of wins. That is something else, really, when you think about it. This is a guy, of course, who's competed in the likes of the Xfinity Series for years before this, so he's been well prepared, obviously. And on top of that, you go back to his supercar days in Australia, and yeah, it's very much a successful time he's having right now. And something that has definitely endeared him to the fans is the fact that he was so celebratory. His antics after the race were absolutely incredible. A lot of people were saying there's no way he's going to get around to be involved in a lot of post-race activities and interviews and stuff like that, and definitely not on Monday morning either. You'll have to be peeling him off of the floor because he'd be very much stuck to it after having all those beers. And you know what? No problem whatsoever. I like that. It's very much human. And we don't see that too much in racing, particularly in the top level. It's very robotic and very boring in a lot of senses because they have to be. They are corporate PR machines, but SVG doesn't really care about that. He's just going for it. And you know what? Absolutely go for it, man. But yeah, it wasn't just the fact he won, but it's the way he won as well. This guy is absolutely unstoppable around street circuits in NASCAR. Any kind of road course as well. You know, he's definitely one to watch. I mean, we've got Sonoma coming up later in the season as well. He's won there in the Xfinity Series. We've got Watkins Glen coming up before too long as well. This guy could genuinely be a danger. He could genuinely be a threat, you know, to go deep into the playoffs. I do not expect him to win it by any means. I think that's just a bit unrealistic because he's still not there in terms of his oval pace, you know. He's all right at it. He trashes out quite a bit too. So, unfortunately, because the vast majority of the calendar is run around ovals, you know, the chances of him stringing together a Joey Logano-like run like he did last season to win the championship is pretty much slim to none. It's not really going to happen. But hey, enjoy it while it's lasting. Enjoy it while it's this fun, you know? And I do think he's going to get some more wins. He's definitely going to be challenging around the other road courses. Sonoma's the big one for him next. I really do think he's going to do well there. But guys, let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. SVG, are you impressed by him? Do you think the playoff system needs to change? I remember when he won in Mexico not too long ago, everybody was calling for the playoff system to change. It's not fair that SVG is there. He's got that one win, that one good result, and he's going to be there in the playoffs. Well, he's got 2 good results now, at least 2 victories this season, which not that many people have gotten. Not that many people have gotten, albeit, of course, it is around the most unique of NASCAR circuits, something that is not an oval, something that is a street track. It's the only one there on the calendar. So we've spoke a lot about NASCAR's point system over the years here on this channel, guys, and obviously the playoff system in particular is a very controversial one. Now, should it change? Should it go back to one of the old formats? Now, I've spoke at length about how I think actually the chase is a good format to go back to. I prefer it to what we have now currently, where in theory someone like Joey Logano, of course, could just win at the right time and, of course, get through and win the championship. You could still just have a really good 10-race run in the chase if you managed to make it, but it was more difficult. Effectively, limiting the final race to the title decider does, of course, give away the fact that, you know, some drivers are more consistent than others. And it doesn't reward consistency overall. It just basically means that if you win at the right time, then you win. Now, of course, the counter argument is, well, that's just hard cheese, effectively. You know, it's tough luck. You know, those are the rules. Those are laid out at the start of the season. And Joey Logano did the best job in that format to actually win it, despite, of course, getting 14th overall if we went with the old Winston Cup format. Now, let's talk about that. That's not something we spoke about too much here. I've seen people in the comments, of course, highlighting that we should go back to the old days with the Winston Cup standings, where effectively every race was equal. If you won the most races over the course of the season, no matter when it was, then you're fine. There's no playoff system, there's no chase, no nothing like that. And a certain Dale Earnhardt Jr., who's been doing a lot of rounds in the media, obviously, in the Earnhardt TV show, the documentary show that is out now, and he's a regular pundit on the NASCAR coverage as well. And of course, son of one of the true greats of the sport, Dale Earnhardt, and a very good NASCAR Cup Series driver in his own right too. Now, he's been saying that we should go back to the old Winston Cup format. That'd be much fairer. And yeah, from a pure sporting point of view, it absolutely is. I mean, if you look at other sports, I mean, yes, a lot of American sports have playoff systems, but if you look at a lot of sports outside of the US, for example, you look at football here in the UK, you know, you look at the system that all these leagues use, like the Premier League, you know, you can have a relatively bad end to the season, you can still win the league title as long as you get the most points over the course of a season, you're in. And that goes for most sports in most parts of the world, but America is a little different when it comes to this. You know, America loves its playoff system. We see it in major sports such as American football, such as basketball, baseball, NHL. They all have a playoff system of some kind just to keep the kind of interest in there going to the end of the season, and that is what's known as the postseason. But what's different though is that you're not awarded a championship at all. Like if you're the best team in the basketball's East Conference over the regular season, you get an award for that. You don't get the big trophy, of course. You still need to win the playoffs, and that's the ultimate prize. But you are still known as the best team in the East for that year. In NASCAR, you don't really get any award for it. I mean, yeah, people will say, oh, they were the best person in the regular season before the playoffs started. That will always be there, but it doesn't really mean anything. It really doesn't mean anything. I think Kyle Larson was the best over the course of the regular season last time around, but of course he didn't even make it into the Final Four at Phoenix. So should we go back to the old Winston Cup format? Well, from a sporting point of view, yeah, that'd be absolutely the most pure way to do it. Every race is worth the same as another. There's no in it, you win it. There's no postseason playoffs. None of that stuff. From a pure sporting point of view, it's the best system to go with. However, will we go with it? No. No chance. There is absolutely zero chance NASCAR will do that. Why? Because they want a guarantee that going into the final race of the season at Phoenix this year, at Miami Homestead next year, wherever we go after that, that is the championship decider. That is the Final Four. It is marketed as such and therefore promoted as such, and it has to be that. Yeah, from a sporting point of view, it's not as fair, but from a commercial opportunity point of view, the playoffs is big business, and having that final race as the title decider is something that a lot of circuits will pay a lot of money for. If it is the final race of the season and it's not the championship decider, it's not worth as much to the circuit, it's not worth as much to the broadcasters. That's why it'll never change, in my opinion. I think they're going to keep going with this system, no matter what the fans say. They're just going to keep doing it. Does it make it right? No. But are they going to do it? Yeah. That's my opinion on it anyway, guys. What's yours? Let us know in the comments below. NASCAR's 4th of July weekend event was the Grant Park 165 from the streets of Chicago. Perhaps the last Chicago street race we will see in NASCAR. We'll have to wait to find out about that. But who was the king of Chicago this week? Let's have a look at the 5 things that we learned from the Grant Park 165 around Chicago, Illinois. So at the start of the race, it was Shane Van Gisbergen who was on pole position, but alongside him was Michael McDowell, and McDowell got his elbows out in the early stages to fend off the winner from 2 years ago. But it took all of 3 laps for us to see some serious contact in the first caution period, as we got a big pile up on the circuit. As this is a street track, it is relatively narrow, especially for these big bulky NASCARs, and Carson Hocevar had some contact, spun around, blocked the track. Unfortunately, the likes of Dylan were caught up in that, and there was a big pile up behind. Thankfully, not too many people out because of that, not too much serious contact because of that, but again, it put into question the visibility for spotters, something that Bubba Wallace and his spotter has raised in the build-up to this race. We did get going pretty soon after that again, but yeah, again, big question marks around the safety really of this track, but like I said, this might be the last time that NASCAR comes here, of course. But yeah, McDowell did not let up in the latter stages. SVG chose to pit in the latter stages of stage 1, and that meant that McDowell was essentially unchallenged in the closing stages, and he won the first stage of this race. But would he be able to hold it? Well, for the most part, as we kind of expected around this, especially given his form at this circuit, given his form at the Mexico City circuit as well earlier this season, SVG absolutely bossed the second stage of the Chicago race. But again, because of strategy in this one, he pitted late in stage 2 to give himself a better run in stage 3, and that meant that Ryan Blaney won the second stage in this one and got some very crucial stage points in his hunt to reach the playoffs this season. But who would win stage 3? Well, unsurprisingly, it was SVG once again. Didn't have it all his own way. He didn't have it all his own way, of course. He had to overtake Chase Briscoe in the closing stages of this one, but he did that without issue, really. And just before the caution flags came out as well, very crucially, and despite a late caution late on in this one, Ty Gibbs was trying to put him under pressure, but SVG converted to his second win of the season, his second win around Chicago, and his 3rd Cup Series victory in his career so far. I mean, he was through to the playoffs anyway, but now it's absolutely rubber stamped and sealed. He will 100% be there without a doubt. And the final thing I want to mention, Catherine Legg, shout out to my fellow Brit. She managed to get into the top 20 in this race. Great job for her, and I believe she is the first female to manage that feat, a top 20 finish in a NASCAR Cup Series race, since a certain Danica Patrick managed it in about 2018, 2017, something like that. It's been a number of years anyway, so good on her, well done to her. Yeah, a decent race around Chicago, not really the kind of levels of drama that we are used to when it comes to this track. The weather did not play a role. It looked like it might have rained early on in this one, but the clouds eventually parted, and it was a great victory for Shane Van Gisbergen. What do you think about it, guys? Will you be sad if the Chicago street race does drop off the NASCAR Cup Series calendar for next year? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below as always. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you want to see more of this, guys. And have a fantastic day wherever in the world today, and we'll see you very soon.